Welcome to Pathcast. I'm Brad Whitaker. More drama between Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. And as a Patriots fans, at least at this point, these are the absolute worst kind of stories. You know, there wasn't a lot of criticism, believe it or not, when the Patriots decided to move on from Belichick. I'm sure some fans were upset. Patrick Pass certainly thinks it was a mistake. But for the most part, after a 4-win season, when many expected the Patriots to bounce back after just missing the postseason the year before, it was ready. It was time, right? It was time to move on for Bill Belichick. We all knew that maybe this was the time to start the Gerard Mayo regime, and it made some sense. But the continued piling on of Belichick that we've seen ever since, whether it was the Apple TV Plus documentary, whether it was from Robert Kraft really failing to acknowledge him much in his press conference at the NFL owners meetings, and then the latest story coming out today, it just seems really unnecessary. And, you know, it's not even like Belichick is taking the high road here. Like, he's just taking no road at all and winning the PR battle by not even really saying anything at all. Like, he was on the Pat McAfee show, wasn't asked about it. I don't think Pat would ask him about it. But Belichick seems to be coming out pretty good, even though this story that came out today from ESPN is rather scathing. But it basically says that Robert Kraft told Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank not to trust Bill Belichick. The story says, quote, "In a conversation with Blank, Kraft delivered a stark assessment of Belichick's character, according to a source who spoke to two people, a close Kraft friend, and a longtime Belichick confidant. The source quoted the Belichick source as saying, Robert called Arthur to warn him not to trust Bill. That account was backed up, the source said, by the close Kraft friend. Multiple sources said that Kraft spoke with some candor to Blank about Belichick, though the sources declined to elaborate. One source close to Belichick said Kraft was a big part of why the Falcons passed on hiring him. Now, in a lot of ways, this story doesn't really pass the smell test to me. This seems like one of those taken out of context type stories. Robert Kraft, Arthur Blank, two very close owners. I think they're considered really good friends. Has he at some point spoken really candidly about Bill Belichick and his kind of curmudgeon approach to being an NFL football coach? I'm sure, but is that anything that none of us don't already know? No, we know Belichick's kind of a grumpy guy. We know that he is not one of these so-called player-friendly NFL coaches. But this idea that Robert would actually go out of his way to call the Falcons owner and tell him, not only, I don't think you should hire Belichick, but you shouldn't trust him at all. The guy that won me 6 Super Bowls and brought us to even more Super Bowl games, it just doesn't pass the smell test to me. Now, the Patriots and Robert Kraft have denied that they did this, and they in fact said that they endorsed Bill for the job. And at least publicly, Robert Kraft, and we saw this at the press conference when Bill left the team and the two supposedly mutually agreed to part ways, even though we really know Belichick was fired. He said, we're going to wish Bill nothing but the best, and we'll be rooting for him except for when he plays the Patriots, wherever he goes as a head coach. Now, Belichick obviously was not hired anywhere else, and something else that came from this story, which was rather surprising, was that Belichick didn't even make the short list among the Falcons ownership, among the Falcons staff, front office there that were part of that decision-making. He didn't even crack the top 3 among all of those people, all of those stakeholders who were able to weigh in on deciding who would be the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And Raheem Morris was ultimately the decision, and he's going to be known as kind of a players-friendly coach, which seems to be the trend that the NFL is going, and I'll get to that in a minute because I think it's rather hilarious and it's going to backfire big time. But Belichick, not going to work for the Falcons, obviously, coming out of this, but we're seeing this offseason Patriots fans really starting to turn on Robert Kraft. You know, there was this narrative that Bill Belichick was unwilling to spend money and bring in high-end free agents, and then we bring in Elliott Wolf as the de facto GM. And yeah, they were supposedly willing to throw money at a guy like Calvin Ridley, which I would have disagreed with had they signed him. But for the most part, the Patriots are operating business as usual and not really focusing on spending on high-end free agents similar to Bill Belichick. And because of that, some of the blame is falling on Robert Kraft, similar to John Henry and Red Sox ownership and their unwillingness to spend, where, they brought in a new GM and it was business as usual there as well. And then we're also seeing the NFLPA report card come out saying Patriots don't really take care of their players well. The ownership ranks low on taking care of the players and their families and the facilities and the locker room. Robert Kraft acting all surprised about it, even though the same report card, very similar results came out just last year and they haven't done anything to address it. Patriots fans are starting to turn on Kraft himself. And many are blaming Jonathan Kraft as well. And I don't really know who deserves the blame here, but this has not been a very good look by ownership. And we're starting to see Patriots fans really backing Bill Belichick. And look, Bill's going to have a lot of positive media appearances. He's going to be covering the draft on Thursday with Pat McAfee. He's going to take the high road on all of this stuff. But deep down, he's very upset with the Apple TV Plus documentary, with the way he's being portrayed with some of these stories. And the more piling on happens to Belichick, it almost seems like none of the mud is really actually sticking. He looks pretty good coming out of it. And Patriots fans are starting to feel that way. And Robert Kraft is going from one of the most beloved owners in the NFL to one that the fan base is really pointing fingers at this point. And I'm not saying that Robert Kraft actually went and did this. I don't necessarily believe this story, but do I think Kraft has had candid conversations with Arthur Blank and other NFL owners about how he's not happy with the way Belichick does things? Yes, and that's why I think this story came out, because I think it was probably taken out of context that Kraft said, hey, don't hire Belichick, or you can't trust the guy. But I think based on conversations that he's had with people, that is the way it is being portrayed, and that's why this story is coming out. And it's really too bad to see. I would have liked to see Patriots move on from Belichick, and that was it. The timing of the Apple TV Plus documentary was not great, and it really came out as a hit piece on Belichick. Some of it deserved, but a lot of it really not, especially the Aaron Hernandez stuff, which I found to be absolutely ridiculous. Did a podcast on that a few weeks ago if you want to check that out, about how it really did come out as a hit piece on Bill. And look, Bill is an old school guy, but the results speak for itself. The last 3 to 4 seasons, not great. Didn't draft well, at least on the offensive end. Didn't handle the Mac Jones situation well. Probably didn't deserve to come back for another season as the Patriots head coach. But the totality of his resume, even before New England, with what he did with the New York Giants under Bill Parcells, he's the greatest NFL coach of all time, arguably the greatest GM of all time, even if he hadn't been a great GM the last decade or so. And it's hard to see because, at some point, Bill will stop looking into head coaching jobs, or he'll get a new job and then retire. And is he going to fall back into good graces with Robert Kraft? And if Robert Kraft wants to have him back, have a ceremony like he's having with Tom Brady this summer and put him in the Patriots Hall of Fame and sell out Gillette Stadium and honor him, Belichick may just tell him to pound sand. And at this point, I wouldn't blame him for doing it. And the fans at this point wouldn't blame him either. And that's tough to see, because this is a guy that has built the Patriots into what they are. Yeah, I know Robert Kraft had a big part. Tom Brady arguably had an even bigger part. You can't have Belichick without Brady, but you can't have Brady without Belichick either. And it's tough to see these stories continue to come out, but the way they come out really just makes Belichick look better, in all honesty, and it makes Robert Kraft look very petty. And he's going to continue to spend this offseason and perhaps well into next season and into the future in damage control, trying to repair his relationship with Bill, while Bill just kind of brushes it off and moves on to the next big thing. But I do think the reason Belichick didn't end up getting a NFL head coaching job, excuse me, is because there is this trend in the NFL where they say, all right, we have the millennial generation, we have these Gen Z players coming into the league, and they want things to be more collaborative. They want them to be more player-friendly and less of a drill sergeant atmosphere, less of these Texas two-a-day practice, tough it out type coaches, and more of a hand-holding type situation. And that's what we've seen with some of the coaches that were hired in vacant positions this offseason. Now, inevitably, as happens every year, a handful of these coaches, a quarter to a third of them, are going to fail. And we're going to see an overcorrection going back the other way. And yeah, guys like Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, who are known as being tough head coaches, at least tough on their players, they're going to be able to get jobs, maybe even as soon as next season because of it. And we're going to see teams go, all right, we tried the player-friendly thing, and they're going to go back. We want the drill sergeant head coach in there. They're going to overcorrect the other way, and Bill Belichick will ultimately find a job. Where that is, I'm not sure. I know the NFC East has a lot of potential openings, depending on how these teams perform. The Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles. I wouldn't be shocked to see Belichick join one of those teams as the head coach, maybe even the head coach / GM as soon as next season. Because one of those teams is going to tumble, right? Cowboys should have made the Super Bowl a number of times over the last decade. They have not. Mike McCarthy's been underwhelming. Nick Sirianni, we know he's on the hot seat. And the New York Giants have just been mediocre at best. So I would expect one of those positions to open up, and they will give a good hard look. Bill Belichick, and I think Mike Vrabel will ultimately get a head coaching job again because of it. But that's it for this edition of Pat's Cast, taking a little bit of break from draft coverage today. Not with a story I really wanted to talk about, but this was the main story going around Patriots Nation today. We'll be back with more draft coverage, more Patriots coverage, more breaking news as it comes out here on Pat's Cast. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. And we'll be back as the draft gets closer, and be sure to tune in next week as we cover the draft the day of. After each pick, at least in the early rounds, break those down a little bit. Going to be interesting. J.J. McCarthy, Patriots seem to love him, fans don't. Drake May, raw, but do they want him? Do they not? Is Jaden Daniels going to follow the Patriots? Are they going to trade back? Is Marvin Harrison Jr. in the conversation? We don't know. A lot is going to transpire over the next week or so. We'll be here to cover it.
In the land of the Patriots, where legends are born, Gerard Mayo steps up the heart of New England's swan. Bill Belichick passes the torch, the crown's now in play. Pat's Cast is here to witness greatness, take the day. Gerard Mayo, the prodigal son, strong and true. He's got the fire in his eyes, ready to lead the crew. Bill's legacy lives on, the dynasty never ends. Pat's Cast celebrates the story that transcends. Pat's Cast, rise up.